Nursing homes, the good ones are getting better and better at what they do. They have more professional support. The needs of the people are more complex. And you want to see that trend continue. There should be two kinds of nursing homes, the excellent and the non-existent. Actually, the nursing home today needs to emphasize nursing, and it needs to emphasize home. Families often don't know where to turn. And here's a typical nursing home scenario. Elderly relative is wound up in the hospital for a stroke or a hip, and they get the short-term treatment, and they get short notice that they've got to go somewhere for recuperation. So how do you know where to turn? What data should you look at to tell you? There are services that are highly specialized at rehab. And people like rehab because it gives you hope. And you go in and you work hard, but you know that in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks you got an excellent chance of being back home again. And people typically feel good about that experience. So that's a good thing. Others come out of the hospital and they're not going to get better. So what happens to them? Some get referred to hospice programs. Well, you look at mortality figures. If you've got a nursing home that has a hospice, their mortality figures are likely to be higher than those that have rehab but no hospice. So you have to really know what to look at. But what consumers are faced with is how do you turn a lot of data into really helpful information. And so you can start with the Nursing Home Compare. It has a lot of data on it. And that would be an indicator of places you might want to look. But it shouldn't be the final determinant of where you go. I think CMS is on disclaimers about that on the Nursing Home Compare would tell you the same thing. Now, the so-called 5-star system, it's a really good idea for people to go look and say, there's a place with 1, 2, 3, or 5 stars. We have supported the notion of that. The issue has been the implementation and the lack of really well thought out, reliable data to inform the system. And it's missing one huge component that we're encouraging CMS to put in sooner than later, and that is consumer satisfaction. So the consumer groups will tell you that, as we will, there are parts of this system that are just not ready for prime time. So what we're trying to work with CMS on is how do you take a good idea and with all of its flawed qualities today, simplify it and make it better, quicker, so it can be more reliable for people. But it has significant flaws in it today and inconsistencies. There are people that will tell you that places that have 1 or 2 stars may really be much better than that, and some with 4 or 5 stars that people know are really not that good. So we think that the effort needs to be put in taking a good idea and improving it, not continuing to try to make a flawed implementation process, put it up on the website and hope people can figure it out on their own. Now, ideally, it is good for families to have these conversations with seniors in the family before there is a crisis, and to say, you know, we don't want to face this, Mom or Dad, but if we did, and you know, we had to come in from out of town and help you find a place, where would you want to go? And if they say, I don't want to talk about that and none of your business, then so be it. You just have to do the best you can under the circumstances. But most of the time, seniors will say, well, you know, I have given that some thought. I've visited over the years several places. I've had friends in this place or that place, And if it were my preference, I'd rather go here than there. Most people know. That's the thing about it in the community. You know where the good schools are. You know where the good grocery stores are. You know the good restaurants. You know the good nursing homes. You know the good doctor's practices, because the word of mouth is, I still think, the most powerful source of information about a lot of good services, including nursing homes and communities. It is a good way of planning for your own future. We are a culture, as I think Woody Allen or somebody said, that thinks death is optional in our country and other places. It's inevitable. How do you prepare for the aging process, and how do you mitigate against an accident that can happen to anyone at any age? The most important things to think about now, one is plan together with your families. Have honest conversations about what ifs in the family. That's hard to do, but it relieves people of a lot of guilt later, because what you find is people making promises they can't keep. How many of us have said to an older loved one, I promise I will never put you in a nursing home? Well, that was back before the daughter had to go to work and people depended on 2 or 3 incomes, or Alzheimer's disease took its toll by someone wandering away from home, and police found them in a bad way. You got to talk about these issues.
Interesting. Very little. When I first came, all we could do, we had a fixed camera that we